Donald Trump running the most dangerous and, let's just be real, dumb administration in history is something we all could have seen coming. And we did. And we warned people about it. But what's surprising to me is that this administration has already reached a point of such disastrous incompetence that even MAGA Republicans in and around the White House are turning on Donald Trump. And it's not just an advisor here or a leak there. Republicans are furious that JD Vance is turning on Donald Trump and stabbing him in the back. And not just that, top Republicans in the Senate are doing the same thing as well. It is a civil war inside MAGA that I cannot wait to break down, because it's always fun when they're fighting with each other. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, before we can get into what JD Vance did that has MAGA Republicans and Trump so upset, I feel like we have to learn a little bit more of some breaking news about Signalgate.
And as meritless as his rise to this job was, he sure does like to talk an awful lot about merit.
The DOD will be merit-based and colorblind. You will be judged based on how good you are at your job. Full stop. That's it.
We will judge you as an individual by your merit. Focusing just on lethality and meritocracy. I mean, this is an institution built for meritocracy. Meritocracy.
Will you be judged by how good you are at your job by merit? Doesn't seem to be the case. I mean, he certainly doesn't have much, as we all know. And apparently neither do the people he's surrounding himself with. This week, the Associated Press reported that Hegseth's younger brother, Phil, is currently serving in a key role at the Pentagon as a liaison to the Department of Homeland Security and a senior advisor to his brother. Now, you might be wondering what kind of experience Phil Hegseth brings to that job. Well, according to his publicly available resume, Phil's past experience primarily includes founding his own podcast company. Good for you. Doesn't make you qualified to be the senior advisor of the Secretary of Defense. And working on social media and podcasts at the Hudson Institute. I mean, again, good for you. Not a qualification for the job you seem to have been given. He also worked alongside his brother when Pete was the CEO of one of those veteran groups that he ran into the ground. In fact, Pete paid his little brother $108,000 to do media relations for that organization. In a statement to the AP, the Department of Homeland Security confirmed Phil Hegseth's job title and said this interagency mission is part of Mr. Hegseth's preview, presumably meaning purview there. So there's that. And guys, I really wish this was like the last embarrassing Hegseth story. I promise you, this gives me no real pleasure. I had to tell you about today. But according to the Wall Street Journal, Hegseth also brought his wife, a former Fox News producer, to 2 meetings with foreign military counterparts where sensitive information was discussed. Here she is, you can see her there, entering a bilateral meeting with Hegseth's British counterpart. That's her right there in the blue. Apparently, in that meeting, Hegseth had to explain why the U.S. cut off intelligence sharing with Ukraine, which I think we'd all classify as a pretty sensitive matter. And no, Hegseth's wife is not a Defense Department employee. And when asked if she was even had a low-level security clearance, the Pentagon declined to comment, which, by the way, is a tell. So, yeah, given all the recent evidence and given all the past evidence, it is fair to ask, should the American people trust Pete Hegseth to run the largest military in the world? I think you know the answer. And I really hate to quote myself here, but 2 days after he was confirmed for this job, this is what I had to say. As I said, Pete Hegseth was confirmed. He was sworn in, and he's now in charge of the most powerful military in the history of the world. And it is my sincere hope, it should be everyone's, that he can handle that job. But if he can't, just remember that there was an avalanche of red flags that all but 3 Republican senators overlooked on their way to confirming him. Remember all of it. We will. Told you we'd remember.
Yeah, so it looks like the administration that can't stop talking about meritocracy and how much it hates DEI is doing a lot of its own MAGA DEI. I don't know what qualification any of these people have. And of course, Pete Hegseth bringing his wife in for top secret hearings. It's mind-boggling from the guy who had the most attention on his level of inexperience from the beginning. You would think he would be doing everything he could to try to present himself as some reasonable person, but it's not a surprise that that's not happening. But like I said, again, what is surprising is how quickly so many are turning on Donald Trump. And we actually saw that, speaking of Signalgate, the reason why I wanted to start with Pete Hegseth, from Donald Trump's own vice president. And that kind of flew under the radar, but it's coming back up amid tensions within MAGA. And I want to read more about it right here. Jaws on the floor. GOP lawmakers angry JD Vance tried to block an order from Donald Trump. Senior Republican lawmakers are reportedly upset with JD Vance for going against Donald Trump. Vance avoided a lot of scrutiny in the Signal chat scandal, despite the fact that he was indeed a participant in the conversation, which revealed detailed attack plans to top officials and a reporter who had been accidentally included. But now it is coming out that the top GOP leaders are angry with Vance, as NBC News reported Sunday. In an article entitled JD Vance's Role in Signal Chat Angers Senior Republican Lawmakers, the outlet reported some think Vance tried to block an order from Trump, while other lawmakers feel he is on the wrong side of a rift between MAGA and GOP internationalists. Vice President JD Vance's last-minute concerns about President Donald Trump's decision to strike the Houthis in Yemen, raised in a now public Signal group chat with other top U.S. officials, have left senior Republican lawmakers angry. The report states some are upset because they think Vance was trying to block a directive from Trump. Others, reflecting a broader debate inside the administration and the GOP over the wisdom of embarking on a stepped-up campaign against the militant group, are upset about the side he took. The report even quotes one senior Republican official on Capitol Hill as saying, Capitol Hill Republicans still have their jaws on the floor with how actively the VP worked to undo a Trump decision. Thank goodness Miller stepped in and put him in his place. The Jet GOP official reportedly added, it's one thing to have a healthy interagency debate before a decision is made. It's another to try to undo a commander-in-chief decision once Trump gives the execute order. This is the latter, and it's very Bolton-esque. Another Republican lawmaker quoted Vance in the text asking, the president was not aware how inconsistent this is with his own messaging. These are the president's policies, and for JD Vance to question them like that is ridiculous. He is the commander-in-chief. So yeah, I also thought that this wasn't getting nearly enough attention, which is not a surprise. MAGA is always going to try to cover up the worst elements of what happened in any given scandal. But yeah, JD Vance was directly opposing Donald Trump, which is no shock. JD Vance has spent most of Donald Trump's political career opposing Donald Trump. That was kind of his whole shtick, which makes you think, what does he actually believe is happening in this administration? Does he feel positively about it? Are there other leaks that might come out of what JD Vance has to say about, I don't know, maybe tariffs? Speaking of which, other lawmakers are also upset with that, even though Donald Trump is doing his best to cover that up.
On the tariffs that you're planning, so you're expecting to hit something like 10 to 15 countries, is that right?
No.
All of the countries across the board?
Not 10. I don't know who told you 10 or 15 countries.
Well, we heard that. So we heard that you were going to aim for the 15%.
But you didn't hear it from me.
Okay, so how many countries will be in that initial tranche?
You'd start with all countries, so let's see what happens. There are many countries.
On the Russia.
I haven't heard a rumor about 15 countries, 10 or 15
So
countries.
you're starting with all countries?
Essentially, all of the countries that we're talking about.
So Trump is talking, as he always does, so positively about the tariffs. They're going to be great. They're going to be great, these tariffs. And yeah, it doesn't really go far in convincing Republican lawmakers like GOP Senator Rand Paul, who said this. Rand Paul trashes tariffs as bad for America. I really strongly disagree with Trump. Senator Rand Paul blasted the global tariffs President Donald Trump is planning to implement starting this Wednesday. In an interview with WABC Radio in New York Sunday, the Kentucky senator cited opposition in his home state from auto manufacturers in the bourbon industry, among other sectors he believes will be hurt by the tariffs. I think tariffs are bad for any country, and I think they'd be bad for America. And economically, I think it'll hurt us, Paul said. The stock market, there's millions of people voting every day with their pockets, and the stock market's very skittish, afraid of tariffs. Paul believes the argument from Trump officials that the tariffs are vital for national security does not hold water. This is just something I disagree with Donald Trump on, Paul said. I'm not for the tariffs and will continue to speak out on it because really, international trade since World War II has made us phenomenally rich. Donald Trump thinks in another way. He says we've been taken advantage of, but I really strongly disagree because trade has made us so rich and really has made the world a better place. The more we trade, I think the less we fight. New polling out Sunday from CBS shows 64% of Americans do not believe the Trump administration is sufficiently focused on lowering prices. Senator Paul shares that concern, particularly if tariffs are enacted this week as scheduled. Rand Paul is making sense. What bizarro world are we living in when Rand Paul is making sense? Yeah, and of course the tariffs are going to hurt people. Of course they will have a negative effect. This shouldn't be shocking. Donald Trump's plans aren't smart. They always backfire. They screw up. Yeah, I don't understand. Don't understand how you couldn't see that. I don't know. This is what happens when MAGA is all caught up in the propaganda, which of course we see not just in the White House, in the House and the Senate, but we also see it on television. And there's a great example of MAGA getting called out for their defense of Signalgate that I think is just so great that we have to play it to close this video.
Want to lecture us on what we did wrong? Give me a break.
Look, there's no doubt that what happened at Abbey Gate was a tragedy, just like every loss of life over the last 20 years of the Afghanistan war. We can argue the merits of why we got into the war in Afghanistan. We can argue the merits of how we got out of the war in Afghanistan. But it's up to the Secretary of Defense in those moments to do everything he can to mitigate the risk that our troops face. We did that at Abbey Gate. It was a tremendously chaotic, difficult circumstance that was extremely dangerous for those men and women.
I'm going to get Mallory in. It is wild to me that we would rather live in the past and point blame at Democrats who are no longer in the White House. They are not the leaders in power right now. People want to know right now, what is this administration going to do? What is JD Vance going to do? Who in that Signal chat is going to step forward, say this was a mistake? You should not use apps that any of us can download on our phone to share sensitive information.
But you know why this is important from an argumentative perspective? Because Democrats are positioning themselves as being the authority.
Let's not talk about
what
Democrats
wrong.
versus
Republicans. You have no ground to stand on to lecture us about what's going wrong here when you guys had a catastrophic issue just 3-4 years ago.
One at a time. Why are you so insistent on dividing this country? It is not about
I'm insistent on dividing the
versus
country.
Republicans. It is about people that I am hearing from every single day. People who are asking me, is it safe for me to file my taxes? Because if this is what they are going to do with sensitive military information, are they going to keep my social
people are really worried about
They are.
Now, that was Mallory McMorrow, who is a state senator in Michigan, potentially running for that Senate seat. And I think she's just so spot on there, and especially because anytime someone is disagreeing with, Scott Jennings, they're probably spot on. But we need to take this same approach to messaging that she is and just unapologetically calling out the talking points of the right. I am excited to see her run, potentially. I think she's made it pretty clear that she's running for that Senate seat. It's something we're going to be following on this show. And so if you want to stay up to date on all of that, and of course you enjoy our channel, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around at the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.